Last week, an engineer at Coinbase, one of America's biggest crypto companies, opened his coding assistant, and the AI that answered him was Chinese. He didn't pick it, his company did. Coinbase had just made two Chinese open models, Zhipu's GLM 5.2 and Moonshot's Kimi 2.7, the default for its engineers. The result, per CEO Brian Armstrong? The company's AI bill fell by about half, even as its engineers leaned on AI more than ever. Now look 3,000 miles the other way, to Washington, where the government spent June doing the opposite. OpenAI's newest model, GPT 5.6, launched locked behind a government-approved guest list of about 20 companies. And Anthropic's most powerful model, Fable 5, was switched off for 18 days under a federal export controls order and came back with a new leash that, in Anthropic's own words, trips over ordinary coding work. So here's the paradox that runs this whole story. The country that invented the open internet is putting locks on its AI, and the country famous for censorship is giving its AI away for free. It sounds like science fiction. It's this week's news. China is winning, and it's winning by giving things away. There are 4 layers to how. I'll show you all 4, but stay to the end because the last one is the most important, and it's the one thing money can't buy. If you know anything about Chinese AI, you're already objecting, and you're right to. Yes, these models are censored. Ask DeepSeek about Tiananmen Square and it changes the subject. And yes, run them on Chinese cloud servers and your data can end up in Beijing. Hold that thought. It matters, and we come back to it at the very end. But here's what reframes everything. You don't have to use their cloud. These are open-weight models. You can download them and run them on your own machines. Exactly what companies like Coinbase are doing, and exactly what the closed American models won't let you do. But America still has the best models, you say. True, so how big is the lead? Stanford's 2026 AI Index measured it. On the main head-to-head leaderboard, the gap between the best US model and the best Chinese model is 2.7%. 2.7. 3 years ago, it was over 30. When the models are this close and one of them is nearly free, the lead stops paying the bills. Which raises the real question, why would China give away something that costs billions to build? That's layer 1. And the answer isn't generosity, it's strategy. Think about how OpenAI and Anthropic make money. You pay per model. Your subscription, and above all, the API bills companies rack up every time their software calls the AI. Every query rings the register. Now, flood the market with powerful models that are basically free, and fewer companies need to pay the toll. Silicon Valley's business model starts to wobble. So what does China get? Everything around the model. It's the oldest trick in retail. The supermarket sells bread at a loss, not to profit on bread, but to get you in the door. And once you're inside, you fill the cart. China gives away the model to sell you the cart, the chips, the energy, the whole stack you build on top. And the price gap is brutal. DeepSeek's cheapest model runs about 28 cents per million words of output. The comparable American flagship, Claude Opus, runs $25. That's not twice as cheap, or 10 times. On output, it's on the order of 80 times cheaper. But giving models away only works if you control something others can't copy. And what China controls doesn't show up on any leaderboard. Layer 2. Energy. Running frontier AI is, underneath everything, an electricity problem. And here the gap isn't close. How much more power does China generate than the United States? Not 10%, not 50%, more than double. About 2.3 times as much electricity in 2025. On top of that, Chinese data centers can pay up to half as much for power, though that steepest discount is a government subsidy tied to using homegrown chips. Meanwhile, in the US, Bloomberg reported that nearly half the data centers planned for 2026 are being delayed or scrapped, though analysts at SemiAnalysis push back that the figure overcounts projects that were never really funded. And while America argues, China builds, it just wired a 500-megawatt solar farm straight into a data center hub in Ningxia, out west. Huawei says it can stand one up in 6 to 9 months, about half the time a conventional build takes. Cheap power, poured fast. But energy alone isn't enough. To turn electricity into intelligence, you still need the one piece everyone assumed only America had. Quick breath because we're halfway. 2 layers down. China gives the models away to sell the stack, and it has more than double America's electricity to run them. 2 to go. Layer 3 is the one everyone thought was America's trump card, the chips. And layer 4 is the one I promised at the start. The factor money can't buy, the one that actually decides who wins. If this is useful so far, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps. For years, this was the wall. Want to train or run a serious model? You needed NVIDIA chips, and America controlled who got them. The whole theory behind the export controls. But look what happened this June. A team led by Huawei took DeepSeek's biggest model, 1.6 trillion parameters, genuinely frontier scale, and fine-tuned the entire thing on more than 1,000 of Huawei's own Ascend chips, with zero NVIDIA hardware in the run. The old rule was, Chinese chips can run models, and even fine-tune them, but training a giant from scratch still needs NVIDIA. On raw efficiency, that's mostly still true. But even that wall is cracking. This year Meituan and Huawei each trained trillion-scale models from scratch on all domestic chips. So the standoff comes down to this. America has the chips but is running short on power. China has the power but is still short on the best chips. And here's the asymmetry. China can close its gap with electricity it already has, while America can't manufacture electricity with money. It has to invent new chips and wait years. Even OpenAI is trying. It just unveiled its first in-house chip, codenamed Jalapeno, built with Broadcom. But that's a bet on the future. Which brings us to the layer that decides the present. Layer 4. Talent. The factor you cannot buy. Watch Silicon Valley try anyway. Last year, Sam Altman said Meta was dangling $100 million packages to poach OpenAI's researchers. Meta disputes the figure, but the direction is real. Top AI engineers are now signed like NBA stars. The trouble with a checkbook is that it only works while talent is scarce. So look at where the talent comes from. Take DeepSeek, the company that started this scare. Its founder, Liang Wenfeng, was a quant fund manager who quietly stockpiled thousands of NVIDIA chips back in 2021, almost as a side project. Nobody took him seriously. In January 2025, his Model R1 landed, and NVIDIA lost $589 billion in a single day, the largest one-day loss any company has ever suffered. And the detail everyone skips, DeepSeek's team was built almost entirely at home, out of China's own universities, with, in the founder's words, no returnees from abroad. That's not luck. China graduates more than 50,000 STEM PhDs a year, about 50% more than the US, and the single largest share of the world's top AI researchers, 38%, did their undergrad in China. Then Liang made it unforgettable. In June, DeepSeek took outside money for the first time, $7.4 billion from giants like Tencent. But he wrote the deal so investors get no control. You can fund us, he said, but you can't own us. Why turn that down? Because he isn't in it for the money. And when someone moves out of pride, and a country mints thousands like him every year, you can't sign them away with a checkbook. Put the 4 layers together and watch what they do. Cheap energy powers cheap chips. Cheap chips run open models. Open models drive adoption. Adoption sets the standard, and the standard is what generates demand and value for everything else. That's a flywheel, and right now it's spinning China's way. What does America still hold? Capital, and the best models. Both are real, and both are wearing thin. The model lead is 2.7% and shrinking, and the capital is nervous enough that OpenAI has reportedly proposed handing the US government a 5% stake just to buy political peace. Sit with that. In the land of the free market, the leading AI lab is offering equity to the state. And here's the closing irony. Anthropic spent years lobbying for a hard line on China, more export controls, more sanctions. Then, a US export controls order switched off Anthropic's own top models for 18 days. The China hawk, caught in its own net. We've seen this movie before. In 2001, Microsoft's CEO called Linux a cancer. Today, Microsoft's cloud runs on Linux. Cheap, open, and good enough has a way of becoming the standard, no matter who hates it at the start. Nobody wins this by being 2% ahead on a benchmark. It's won by whoever builds the infrastructure everyone else has to stand on. Which leaves the only question that actually matters, and it's not the one the headlines ask. The headline question is, which side are you on, America or China? Wrong question, because neither of them is moving their pieces with you in mind. China's models are censored, and its government can reach inside them. America's are increasingly locked, gated, permission only. Cheer for a team if you like, but the real question isn't which side you're on. It's who you depend on. And if the answer is a single one, American or Chinese, closed or open, you've already lost. Here's the good news. There's one square on this board you actually control. Your own computer. Those open Chinese models, and open Western ones too, you can run yourself. No cloud, no permission slip, no kill switch. That's the real story under the geopolitics. For the first time, the frontier is something you can hold in your own hands. We're building a full, hands-on guide to doing exactly that, so subscribe and you won't miss it. Every number here has its source on screen. See you in the next one.